So again, welcome everyone to our Professional Development Speaker Series Day 2, Graduate School Preparation and Career Panel Talk. We would like to thank you all for registering for our event and deciding to attend and join with us today, even though right now we are physically in very different places. On behalf of the team, I would like to just deliver what we had in mind when we made this event is that we really wanted all of the IBSA members here to be able to start professional networking within the Indonesians. And also we would like for you all to have a better grasp when you start your days in UCLA, if you're an incoming student or whether you're a continuing student and continuing fall quarter. We just want to encourage everyone to maximize opportunities at UCLA. And also, hopefully from today, you guys will have a better will have a better picture of which career path do you want to choose. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous for today. But I guess that's like why we made this event. And I'm going to pass it on to my friend Daphne, who will be showing us the event rundown overview of today.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the events rundown, and I'll be introducing our first guest speaker. So today we're going to start with an opening right now, which was done by our lovely President Valerie. And then after this, we'll have the introduction of our first guest speaker, Parama Suteja. After that, we'll have about 25 minutes for graduate school preparation talks. And then I'll introduce our set of panelists before I'll pass it on to our beloved moderator, Chanel. And then later on, we'll have a Q&A and closing. Don't forget that during the Q&A, all questions in the chat will be addressed. So if you have any questions, don't forget to drop them in the chat below. And if you guys feel like you're confident and you want to speak out those questions yourself, when the Q&A time happens, you can just unmute yourself and ask your own questions. But other than that, don't forget to also address who you want who the question is for, or if it's just a general question, that's for everybody else. And with that, I'll start to introduce our guest speaker. So our first guest speaker is Parama Pradana Suteja. He's our esteemed guest and a current student of Harvard's Graduate School of Design for a master's in architecture. He's also already received a Bachelor of Arts in architecture and a minor in history and architectural planning as well. In May 2017, he was an architectural intern for Smith Group and received a Eisner Prize at UC Berkeley in 2018, which was for outstanding creative achievement in design. Later on in 2018, he also featured in Yale School Architecture's exhibition, Two Sides of the Border, which redefines and reimagines the region of the US and Mexican border as an integrated whole. This exhibition was successful and also moved on to be shown in Berlin at the IBSA Architecture Forum in March 2019. Also, other than that, he's also been an architectural intern in two other groups, Shigeru Ban Architects and Iwamoto Scott. In 2018, though, he served as an architectural designer at Bolin Sawinski Jackson. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, and he will begin sharing his slides.
Well, hello everyone. Can you hear my voice? All right. It's really nice to see lots of people that I don't know here. I'm really excited to share some of the things that I've prepared today. So maybe the first question, who wants to go to grad school here? Let me just, if you guys want to go to grad school, just put your name or on the chat maybe. I see lots of hands raising. Okay, well, to begin with, I'm not a UCLA student. I'm not a UCLA alumni either, but I do have brother here in UCLA. His name is Arda, if some of you guys might know. And maybe to begin with, let me open the slide now. Okay. Can you guys all see my screen now? Is it good? Okay. As Daphne mentioned, here's a brief introduction of myself. My name is Parama Suteja, and I'll be attending Harvard Graduate School of Design this fall. I was really thankful that I got the chance to be accepted at other 10 universities such as MIT, Columbia, Yale, Princeton, UPenn, Cornell, UC Berkeley, UCLA, USC, and Rice universities. And I was really grateful that I been offered 7 scholarships out of those 11 universities. But maybe, okay. Just to begin with, until the first year of my high school, I did not have any plan to study abroad yet that time. However, everything changed when I met my senior who attended UC Berkeley and went to the same high school as myself. And that time I was really inspired to go study abroad. And the thing that I really want to emphasize here is that it is really important for you guys to find a mentor who's competent and willing to help you. Those are the two most critical part that every mentor should have. If a mentor is competent but is not willing to help you, that's not going to be efficient, right? Because they're not going to help you anyway. But if a mentor is willing to help you but is not competent, it's not going to be efficient either, because what he does is not going to be fully helpful because he's not competent. So it is really important to have a mentor who is both competent and willing to help you. I myself, I was really thankful that I met my senior who I consider as my mentor during my first year at my college. I attended DVC before, by the way, before I transferred to Berkeley. And the time, my mentor would be able to tell me like, oh, what are the classes that I should be taking, you know. He knows what I need to do to get into Berkeley. He would give me suggestions, but either it's me who decide whether I want to take it or not. So it also depends on each and every one of you guys as well. Here's a brief timeline of my journey. So from high school, and then I moved to Diablo Valley College before I transferred to Berkeley. After my graduation, I worked in San Francisco and Tokyo. And after that, I applied to 11 universities, and I will be attending Harvard Universities in August 2020. So the first part that I want to discuss is that how did I get into those 11 universities? The key is that prepare your application as soon as you can. I always get confused when people ask me, oh, Parama, how long did you prepare your application? Because like, I know some people who applied to like 2 grad school and they prepared for like half a year. It's hard to answer those questions to me, because like, I cannot say I prepare my application for like 6 months or a year or 2. Because like, I believe that anything we do in the United States when we study in our college would contribute to our grad school application anyway. So like my first year in Diablo Valley College, although it does not directly included in my application, but because, for example, you get good grades during your community college year, and then you transfer to good universities, and good universities would lead you to good work or jobs, and that would lead you to good grad school. So anything you do while you are studying in your college, it really matters. And the most important thing is that you guys have to find your potential and talent that would set you apart from other candidates. Because the key is that find your talent that would set you apart from other candidates. Let's say, if you're a boss in a company, would you accept someone who is like average or someone who has a special skill that would help you or your company to grow? I personally would choose someone who has a special skill for sure. So it really matters to, let's say, become not like the average of the other people, but in a positive way. Don't be like not average, but like crazy, you know? So you gotta be like, have some skills that set you apart from other candidates. Well, some people would also ask me some questions about the motivation letter and essay. And this is just like a general thing that I believe would be really helpful for each and everyone here. Essay is not the same as resume. This is the thing that most Indonesians got wrong. Usually, I myself also got this part wrong at the beginning. I basically put my like the achievements in resume and reiterate that on the essay, which is redundant because like it has been mentioned in the resume. So at the first draft on my essay, I wrote something like, oh, okay, my name is Parama. I was working at this company. I got this award and achievement. Those stuff are not really important at the essay because like it has been mentioned at the resume before. So what is important is that for you to show your character that would set you apart from other candidates. What makes you special? So, and the second part would be to write a compelling introduction and use a hook. I'm pretty sure some of you guys know about this because you guys got most of you guys got into UCLA. So I believe you guys write nice motivation letter. But I just want to reiterate this. Some of my friends use something like a nice hook, something like a 5 seconds that changed my life. So his house was like burned down and he had like 5 seconds to do something to like save his stuff before the house was burned down. But I thought that was like interesting hook because like the reader, they would read like thousands of applications every year and they just like have a couple of seconds or like a minute or two to read your essay. So make sure you have a compelling introduction and avoid cliche for sure. Develop a clear structure and ask someone to proofread your work. Why is this so important? So I noticed that some people would be like, some people would get private with their motivation letter. They would say like, oh, it's okay. I don't want to show this to someone because like it's private, whatever. But the thing is that I believe that everyone should have a editor. You guys know the writer of Harry Potter, right? Like J.K. Rowling. She's a professional writer and she has an editor. But like we're not even a professional. Why are we not having an editor? So it's really important for someone to have an editor who would like to proofread your work. I had 5 people who read my essay before I submitted. Because that's I believe is really important because every time I show it to my friend, there's like some good insights, although sometimes are not. But every time I have my essay proofread by someone, I always get some new insights, which is really important for the development of your essay. Next one, how to write strong resume or CV. Well, this one is not just specific to school, but the first important part is just to research about the school. Let's say when you want to apply to MIT, I would research to the school and ask myself, which part would be more important for MIT when they see my resume? Is it because the school, let's say in my case, it's more of the technical sides. I would emphasize more on the technical sides on my essay. I mean, on my resume. And maybe for the Harvard, I would put something, maybe if they require more of the research, I would put my research part more. Focus on hard skill, not just soft skills. What are soft skill and hard skill? So soft skills are like, you know, I'm good at communication. I'm good at leadership. I'm good at teamwork. I have a good time management. And what more important is it's for me it's sometimes it's quite weird when you see someone, right, like when they say something like, avoid cliche term, I am a hardworking person. Everyone would claim themselves as a hardworking person. It's quite dumb if someone says like, I'm not a hardworking person, or I'm a lazy person in their resume, right? So those stuff I think is not too important to be mentioned at the resume. So it's like better to use those space to put your hard skills. Make sure to use red format. Some school requires 1 page, so don't put 2 page. But if they say at least 1 page, so you can put more than 1 page. Structure your CV based on the like the importance or the what makes you stand out of among other candidates. So let's say if you really have a good experience at your workplace, or if you have a really good experience for your research, then put your research at the top of the resume, something like that. And most importantly, quantify with facts and figures. What does it mean? I often see resume who just put like something like, I help managers doing this, but it doesn't really tell the story of what you really do. It's better for you guys to write something like, oh, I help my manager doing this to increase my company profit by 50%. That's quantifiable. Like, you know, your work contributed to 50% of the profit of the company, rather than just saying, I'm helping my manager. So it is really important to put facts and figure in the resume. And most people, some of them, usually forget to put those. For the scholarship, okay, some of you guys might be asking about this. So there are different kinds of scholarship, even at the Ivy League as well. Firstly, they offer the financial need-based scholarship. If I'm not mistaken, they said something like, if your parents' income is less than like $65,000, you are eligible to apply for like financial need-based aid. And for myself, I got the second one. I got the merit-based scholarship. So it is scholarship based on merit. It is decided based on the student's past experience, I would say. So if you have a really like interesting past experience, and if you are one of the good candidates at the candidates pool, you might be eligible for the merit-based scholarship. This one I did not apply for any scholarship, but they just called me and told me, "Oh, hey, Parama, congratulations, you got accepted to Harvard GSD. And by the way, because it's gonna be free for you. You got the merit-based scholarship." I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. So this one I did not apply, and the question is that if you didn't get the first and the second one, what would you do? There's the third option, which is the LPDP, All Indonesian Government Scholarship. This one is pretty helpful as well, because like they also covers not just the school tuition fee, but also the living costs and even the airplane costs, your flight costs. That's amazing. And if you don't get the third one, the first one, second one, or third one, there's the fourth option, which is the scholarship from private companies. I have my friends who got a scholarship from private companies, and she attended Harvard before. So there are a bunch of ways to get scholarship, guys. And some of the tips to get scholarship. First one, apply to multiple scholarship opportunities. So when I was in Berkeley, I think I got like 3 scholarships before, but many people only knows that, oh, Parama got 3 scholarship, that's nice. But they don't know that I applied to more than 3 scholarship. I don't get scholarship every time I applied, you know? So it is really important for you guys to like apply to as many as scholarship opportunities if possible. Because like, let's say you apply to 10 scholarship opportunities. I think there's a good chance that you will at least get 1 scholarship, right? If not, then there might be something wrong with the application, your application, that might have to be improved. Second one is that to follow the requirements and walk the extra mile. What does it mean? It means that when they ask you to do something, let's say we want you to write like 3 to 5 work experience. There would be people who write 3 work experience, 4, but there would be less people who write 5. So I would walk the extra mile and write the 5, you know? And the last one is that this is the most important part. Make sure to prove yourself that you are the right candidate to receive the scholarship offer. Many people get this wrong. Many people just beg for scholarship. They put they were begging at their essay asking for scholarship. But let me ask you this: if you're the boss of a company, which employee would you hire? Someone who beg to get into your company, something like, oh, could you please just accept me to this company so that I could work here because I need the money? Or the second person who says something like, hey, I have this programming skill that I'm sure will be helpful to your company to increase and maximize your profit of company. For sure, I would choose the second person, because this one is the person that I'm looking for, the person who can give me like contribution to my company, not the one who begged, right? So in the scholarship essay or motivational letter, if you guys might call it, tell them why you're the right candidate for the scholarship offer, not just like begging for the scholarship. It is really important for that. And just to maybe end my my presentation, this is one of my favorite quotes. Shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, by Norman Vincent Peale. This quote tells us that we should dream big. You know, dreaming is like, it's free, right? You can dream as big as you can. And even if you guys like dream and aim for the moon, even if you don't get to the moon, you'll still land among the stars, you know, you'll be up there, and it's really nice. Some people might not want to take like the first step, but without the first step, you cannot walk the 1,000-mile journey. So I think it is really important for us to have a big dream. That's it for now, for me.
Thank you so much, Parama, for your presentation. It was amazing to end on that quote. You have so many achievements, and I'm sure so many people look up to you and want to achieve what you have achieved and be a model for the Indonesian community as well. moving on, we have the introduction of the panelists for our career panel talk. Any questions that you might have for Parama, you can put it in the chat below and it will be addressed during the Q&A. So if anybody has some questions, feel free to put it down in the chat below. So moving on to our panel speakers. Today we have four of our very special guests. One of them is, as you already know, Parama, and then we also have three other guest speakers. We have Samantha Chandra, who graduated UCLA 2020 this year, and she has a Bachelor of Arts in Business Economics and Entrepreneurship minor, along with a Digital Humanities minor as well. We also have Andrew Koeswanto, who also graduated UCLA this year, and he has a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and another Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Economics. He was a double major during his time in UCLA. And lastly, we have Ellaine, who is our former president, and she graduated with a business degree in business economics degree and an entrepreneurship minor. Nowadays, Samantha Chandra works as an analyst at Deloitte Consulting, which is one of the big four companies in the US. Andrew Koeswanto works in Wall Street as a trading analyst with Citigroup. Ellaine works in Jakarta as an analyst for JP Morgan. They all now are going to work full-time and have full-time offers from where they are working. So if you guys have any questions afterwards for them, leave them in the chat below, or if you're confident enough, you can ask it yourself during the Q&A. And with that, I would like to ask if you guys could do a brief photo for our documentation. So if people could turn on their videos before we start and before I hand it off to Chanel, who's going to be our wonderful moderator. So if everybody could turn on their cameras for a while, that would be great.
I think Brian is still figuring out how to stop his screen sharing, but it's fine. Okay, he finally got it. Okay, so we have two people with their camera on. Oh, hi. Okay, sama cowok-cowok ya. Okay. Starting to have more girls here. Yuk, yang lain jangan malu-malu.
Okay, guys, don't be shy.
It's only for our uses as well, so we're not going to be giving it to anyone else.
Calling all current students, Mabel, Kevin, Nate, Will.
Where's Arda?
Come on, guys, ramein aja.
Bu Juliana, if you would want to turn on your camera, Bu.
Okay, you guys look so smart. I'm in t-shirt, so but okay. I'll have my camera on. Just a second.
Thank you, Bu. Okay, kalau nggak ada lagi, maybe Patrick can take a screenshot for all of us.
One, two, three, guys. One more. One, two, three, guys. Thank you.
Yay!
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
you, guys.
Thank you,
You can
everyone.
keep your
Tetap on aja
video.
videonya.
Online aja
Oke.
guys, biar kayak ngomong sama manusia.
Tuh, yang request speakernya sendiri loh, guys.
Okay, you guys, now moving on to our panel. We will have Chanel as our moderator, so I'm going to pass it on to Chanel right now, and she'll be asking the questions.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. Hi, everyone. My name is Chanel, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel. So, to all the speakers, thank you once again for joining us today. We're really honored to have all of you here. So, choosing a career is one of the most important, or probably the most important things in our life. Often we all get the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or which career path are you choosing for? Over the years, our experiences and skills grow, our interests may have changed that lead us to a certain career. So, without further ado, let's hear it ourselves from our speakers. How was each of your journey to your respective industry like? Anyone can start.
I can start.
Okay, thank you,
Can you guys
Elaine.
can you guys hear me okay? Because currently I'm in
Yes.
Indonesia and yeah, the internet is a little spotty. So the question was how I got into the industry. So the industry that
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently in is banking, and honestly how I got into it is kind of it's very basic and it's kind of expected. So during my junior year, I was under a lot of pressure to get a summer internship because that is what usually biz econ students that's what usually biz econ students do. They usually have summer internship for junior year, which may lead to a return offer in their senior year. So the year before that, I was working in consulting instead of banking. And so my summer of sophomore year, I was in EY. And my summer of junior year, I was thinking of re-recruiting for consulting in bigger firms like Bain or BCG or McKinsey. So I started recruiting for consulting, but didn't end up getting any offers. So what I thought at that time is maybe I should try other industries and expand my experiences. So I started browsing around, and I remembered that at that time there were still a couple of banking opportunities available. So I just decided to apply online, and here I am. So yeah, it's nothing special. It's pretty basic. So that's how I got into the industry.
Oh, I see. Nice. But
Yeah.
that's really great. You have the experience of consulting, and now you have the experience in investment banking. And you can see which one fits better for you.
um, I'm not sure. I think, honestly speaking, my personality probably suits more for consulting or investment banking type of job that is more client
Mhm.
facing. I really enjoy talking to people and meeting meeting a lot of people and working on projects. But currently, I am now in the sales and trading division. So, like Andrew, I'm also a trader, but in Indonesia. And yeah, it's a very different experience from consulting. It's not super client facing, but then I'm also really enjoying the experience that I get. And then I think in my team, I still get a lot of exposure to sales products as well because it's such a small team. So yeah, I'm just trying it out and seeing if it's the right job for me long term. Let's see.
Yeah, that's a great thing about. You can definitely try out different industries and eventually decide where you want to be in the end. Okay, so maybe Andrew can go next.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So the question was like sort of my path to the job I was in, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
How's like your journey to your industry?
Yeah. So I got into UCLA with computer science because I took computer science in high school and I really enjoyed it, and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. But when I got there, when I got to the major and when I started to see the classes and like my peers, a lot of them like really, really loved computer science. Like this was sort of their passion. And they had practiced and they go home and they program things of their own personal projects and things that they enjoy. I realized pretty quick I wasn't ever going to do that. And because of that, I didn't think that that if I went and did like a software engineering job, that I would do as well as they would. So instead, I tried to do something that I was at least a little bit more interested in. So I tried to sort of pivot towards a more quantitative, like finance kind of role, which is why I took math econ. I hope that with those two majors, like I would be able to get like a decent job in finance, and like, yeah, that's sort of how I got to where I am. I got the job itself by during my junior year. Ellaine sent me the application for this company actually, and so I applied, and like
You're welcome.
I got lucky, I suppose.
Oh wow, that's really great. Lucu banget.
Okay, so I can also share about my experience and how I got to consulting. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
So I came to UCLA wanting to do something in business. My end goal is to one day be an entrepreneur, like start a company, because I was very heavily influenced by my dad, who's like a small entrepreneur back home, right? So I actually didn't know what consulting even was when I came to UCLA, and all I wanted was to just get general like business experience. And I don't know if like most of you guys know, but biz econ is not actually a business degree. It's more so of an econ degree with some sort of like business kind, like they tie it to business, but it's more so econ. So I was really desperate in getting myself like the business education that I wanted. So that's why I joined like a lot of clubs. I was like dabbling a lot in entrepreneurship, and I joined like this consulting club in my freshman year, I think. I met another Indonesian who was my senior at the time. She was, I think, a year older than me, and she said, "Oh, I'm part of this consulting group. Like, maybe you should give it a try." So I got to know what consulting was. I applied to that club, and I got to know the world of consulting through the student club, which is called 180 Degrees Consulting, for everyone who's gonna come to UCLA and are going to be shopping for clubs. And from there, I kind of just got plugged into the consulting community, and I found out that consulting really is just like a bunch of problem solving for businesses. Like it's not a very defined space. It's like you could be solving like problems for a finance company, but you could also be solving like any types of problems for maybe like a fashion company and things like that. And for me, that was very perfect for like I don't know what kind of business I wanted to start yet. I don't really know what industry that I liked. So that was very appealing to me. And because I was in this club, I was aware of like all the different events and opportunities that were happening on campus. So consulting firms, like the big firms like Bain, BCG, McKinsey doesn't come. Bain, BCG, and then the big four like Deloitte, EY, they like to come to campus and have like recruiting events. So I just saw a lot of like promotional stuff, and then the club would also like encourage like freshmen and sophomores to go to these events. So I would go, and how I got to Deloitte was that during my sophomore year, there was a bunch of events during fall quarter, and I just ended up going to a lot of Deloitte events, and I just heard that they had the sophomore program. And because I was there, I was just like, okay, this is the only thing I could apply to, because most of them only recruit for juniors. So I applied to that, and I prepared for the interviews, and luckily I was chosen to attend this conference, which then turned into a junior like summer internship, and then that became a return offer. But I think how I got to the industry and how I ended up choosing it was because I learned about it through like student orgs and realized that it was suited to what I wanted to do and what I wanted to learn.
I see. Wow. So clubs at UCLA really help you to choose consulting in the end, right?
Yeah, I think clubs at UCLA, especially professional ones, can really help you learn whether or not you like that industry, and if you like the vibes of the people that are trying to get into that industry and things like that. I know a lot of friends who, like, for example, I also joined like a finance group in my freshman year, and I realized that I didn't like it. And everyone in the finance group wanted to go to investment banking, and I was like, oh no, like this means I'll have to go to investment banking too, right? Because that's all I saw. And I got really depressed because I was looking at like, oh, like what is it like to be in investment banking? I was just like, oh my gosh, like that looks so terrible. No shade at investment banking. I just think it didn't suit my personality. So I was very stressed. And then after I had like interacted with other student orgs, I realized that there's so many other career paths and things out there. So I guess the key is also to talk to a lot of people, especially people who have done internships, who've tried different industries, until you can make your own choice. And you have a lot of space to do that at UCLA.
Yeah, definitely. And networking is definitely key in getting more perspective of your interest. So actually, Ellaine, do you mind sharing your experience in traveling to different cities or countries for job interviews and forum? Because I know that you went to Hong Kong, Chicago, and New York for job interviews, right? So how did your experience contribute to where you are now?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of a background. So I interviewed in Hong Kong for banking for Morgan Stanley. I interviewed in New York and Chicago for consulting. In New York for Bain and in Chicago for PCG. And I think the experience helped me now to see that in every country they have very different culture. So for example, in Hong Kong, the environment is way more like uptight and very professional and super, everyone was wearing suits and stuff. Meanwhile, the place that I'm working right now in Indonesia, people are a bit more lax. So that stereotype is a little bit true, kind of, when people say that, oh yeah, people from Hong Kong are super like driven and they're super hardworking and they're also super like competitive with each other. I think I kind of feel that energy when I was there. Meanwhile, the place that I'm working now is more lax. And to tell you about the experience of recruiting in different places and different countries, so I think those experiences are really valuable for me. I really enjoyed it because not only did I get to see offices in different places that are bigger than Indo, and I get to meet so many other people from themselves, and also so many other recruits. I gained some friends from them as well. I think it's also a really fun like weekend for me, or like weekday, because what I usually do is if I get an interview at New York or in Chicago, then I would overstay my interview. So I wouldn't go home right after my interview, and I would just stay for a couple more days and then just walk around as a tourist, because they usually pay all your expenses, right? Yeah, but the experience for the interview itself is pretty nerve-wracking, in my opinion. So I remember I arrived in Hong Kong all the way from LA, and it was a week before finals week, so it was week 10. So
Wow.
I arrived in Hong Kong with a lot of pressure, because I have the pressure of final exams, and I also have the pressure of doing my interview well. And they didn't give you much time to prepare, because they call you today and they say, oh, can you go tomorrow to Hong Kong? And I was like, what? I wasn't prepared at all for a final round. I didn't even realize that I got final rounds. I didn't even think I would get final rounds. So yeah, I just flew to Hong Kong and just wished for the best and just prepared for the interview. But what was really nerve-wracking is when we arrived there, we don't only go to interviews, but before we had a type of networking lunch with all the directors, the managers, the associates, as well as all the other recruits. And it was something very difficult for me to like network with someone I don't know, and yeah, just like try to make yourself shine. It felt like rushing for a frat, but in a more professional way. So yeah, it's kind of nerve-wracking for me. And I remembered I couldn't eat anything during the lunch, so I only ate like 2 pieces of watermelons and drink some tea, because like I didn't have the appetite to eat. I was just nervous all the time and I couldn't speak. So yeah, that was a very mixed experience for me. Yeah. And then usually after that they would make you go through 3 rounds of interviews, and then they will send you home and let you know if you get accepted or not 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later.
Oh, I see. Was it the same experience when you interviewed in Chicago and New York, like the pressure?
In Chicago and New York, it was slightly less because we weren't meeting everyone. So we were only there for our scheduled interview, which was two cases. I think Sammy should be familiar with this because usually for consulting firms, when we go to final round, we have 2 rounds of interview, and then that's it. You go home, and then you just wait for the news. So yeah, it's kind of last nerve wracking. But for banking, you have something called Super Day, and that Super Day is that one whole day where you meet people, network, have lunch, get interviewed, and then go home. So it's very exhausting.
Oh yeah, wow, can't imagine that. So yeah, well, that must be a really fun experience, gaining professional experience in different countries. At the same time, you had the opportunity to learn about the people, the culture, and of course the food. So it looks like networking externally is as important as networking within your community. So I'm gonna ask Samantha. You are heavily involved in the UCLA community. You were the internal vice president for Bruin Entrepreneurs, customer strategy, and UX research of Radio, and you managed to be the president of 180 Degrees Consulting, which you mentioned earlier. How do you think recruiters value those experiences? And do you have any tips in joining clubs and starting your own project?
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot to unpack in that question. To answer the first question, how do recruiters look at these experiences? Definitely look to get involved when you get to UCLA, or if you're already at UCLA and you're not involved in anything, you should be looking at different communities and different clubs to be involved in, and not just for your resume, but also to, I think, explore what do you like. Like as I said, you learn about different industries and you learn different skills. But leadership positions, as soon as you hit like sophomore year or junior year, you should try to already have some leadership positions or some sort of involvement that is not just a member, just to show that you are a person who takes initiative and you can also work in teams. There's just like a lot of things to be said by the fact that you're a student and you also choose to do all these extra things. And I don't think anyone would give you an interview unless you have like a very special connection or something, if you don't have any involvements while you're in school. So I'm just gonna let you know, like a little, it's not like a secret, but we have a rubric in my clubs when we evaluate the candidates who apply to be club. And this is just a school club, we're not even a company, right? But there are a lot of people, like 180 Degrees would get 200 applicants, and we only want to take like 15 or 10. So there's not a lot of slots. And we have a rubric, and for sophomores, we expect to see some sort of leadership involvement or something in the business. Because 180 Degrees is business consulting, we want to see that leadership in business. Or if it's not in business, we want to see, okay, where are they devoting their time to? So if a club, just a club, have that much of a high standard for UCLA students, I would assume companies, especially big companies like BCG, like Bain, or like any of the big 4 accounting firms or anything, they would also want to see the same things. And it shows because all the people, so once you're plugged into any of these networks, any of these communities, you kind of start knowing everyone who's in it. And you see, like, these are the people who are getting offers, who are getting interviews, because you know that they're also involved in the community, and that's why you know them. So that's one. Definitely make sure to try to get involved. It doesn't even have to be in, like, if you're very passionate about fashion, there's like a fashion club at UCLA, right? And if you take leadership position, or if you start something super new in that space, that also says a lot about yourself. And then the second part was, what is my tips for people who wants to join clubs, right?
Yeah.
And like starting something new. So just a disclaimer, the way I got involved to all of these things, basically fall quarter, I did not apply to anything. I was too scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to like spend all my time studying, which is fine. I was still adjusting. But then winter quarter comes, and I realized everyone had something, everyone was finding friends also through clubs. And it's hard to make friends in classes at UCLA because they're so big. So I wanted to be involved with things too, and I was just like mass applying. You basically have your mini round of recruiting, the recruiting experience for some people in freshman year when they're like sending applications to clubs and things like that, wishing to get accepted. Because you have that week where it's just interviews and interviews and interviews with clubs too, and that also like prepares you a little bit for like real-time recruiting, because you're not as nervous anymore. You're like, oh, I've done like tons of interviews when I was freshman, in business professional and things like that. So that's also like another bonus point of like applying to a bunch of clubs. Yeah, so basically in freshman year, I got accepted to the consulting club, the entrepreneurship club, and the finance club, which is where I explored all those three industries. And then I dropped the finance clubs eventually, and I just kind of started becoming more and more involved in the entrepreneurship and consulting club. And from there, it kind of just led to my positions, the IVP, the internal vice president position. And also eventually in senior year, I stepped up to be the president for 180 Degrees. And I think that was just like a natural progression of things. I was just spending a lot of time with these people, and I like really liked the mission of these clubs. And then for Radius, which was a student startup that I had joined as like one of the founding team, that was also, I just saw like a random Facebook post by someone, and that person is like a mutual friend because of some of my the connections that I had at UCLA through my entrepreneurship club. So you see how everything is connected, and I was like, oh, like sounds like a cool project. He's looking for people to join their team. I just reached out, and he was also in the middle of like assembling a team, and that kind of just fell into place my senior year. I wasn't even looking for it, but yeah, I also saw, I never had the guts to start something completely new at UCLA, but I mean, we have people in the Indo community who did stuff like that. And also just a lot of people that I know who's really passionate about like a space, and they realize that there's no such thing at UCLA. Like there's no club for, I don't know, like, I think there's still no club for art, or like a proper run club for like just casual artists. So if someone wanted that, then it's quite easy to just try to start it. And that'll also look good in your resume or your experiences, like the fact that you had the initiative to start something like that. And it's also like immediately a leadership position if you can't get into any of the other clubs. So that's kind of how like I ended up with what I had. And yeah, and then the tip is just to start early and be proactive as a freshman. Your clubs, especially competitive ones that will help you get the jobs that you want, are going to grade sophomores a lot more harshly than freshmen. So that is like kind of like a harsh truth / tip. Like people expect freshmen to know a lot of like things. If it's business org or like finance related organization, they would want you to already know accounting because they expected you to have already taken like all the accounting classes. You know, but freshmen, they're like, oh, like welcome to, like they have a like less expectations. So that's probably when you should start.
For sure. Yep. So UCLA clubs are definitely the starting point, and definitely start early. And I actually heard that UCLA clubs, they prefer to admit freshmen compared to transfers. Is that true or false? I'm guessing it's true.
Okay, so I some clubs, I think in a way it's true, unfortunately, because when clubs admit students, they think about the longevity of the club and how the student can like give back to the club. And I think the sentiment is that freshmen still has 4 years at school as opposed to transfers. And this is true, especially in the business community where it's very cutthroat. But I think it's changing. Like I know that in 180 Degrees, like we try really hard to not discriminate against transfer students, and like a lot of people that I talked to has already like also kind of like understood how it's like very unfair that it's not preferred. So I think one way to like navigate that is in your resume, make sure you should like it shows that you are like a transfer student, because what a lot of people do is they look at the graduation year and they're like, oh, like this person is a junior, we don't know you're a transfer, right? Because in the resume it just says like graduated like graduating 2022 and you're like, oh, it's a junior.
Yep.
And then you see that there's no involvement at all at UCLA.
Mm.
You know, and we're like, oh, like what have you been doing for the past 2 years? You definitely didn't do anything, so we can't interview you, right? But if we
Yeah.
know that this is a transfer student and you include your involvement at your community college or wherever you were before that, then that could be taken into account. But some resumes don't even say that, but there's no way of knowing. So I think that's also one way that
Mhm.
actually hurt transfer students when clubs are looking at applications.
I see. Okay, that's a really good input actually. So yeah, freshmen, you're at an advantage. Make sure to use that well. And transfers, don't be discouraged, and make sure to indicate in your resume that you're a transfer student. So I guess
Also,
let's see it from
just
yep.
really quick. I don't want to take too much, but
Mhm.
reaching out to people in that club, and like especially if we know like transfer students there are the chance that it's going to be less favorable. Reaching out to people in the club who can vouch for you and say like, hey, this person is very interested, like you have to interview him or something like that. Don't be shy of like reaching out to random people. I have a lot of people reaching out to me, just like random people that I don't know when I was president, and I always talk to them and I always give the resume a second look. So, and it's easier to do that with students, and it's also practice because you will be doing that also when you're recruiting. So just practice with students. It's really similar cycle, and then you do it again for real in junior year with the firms.
Yep, it's a practice for all of us. Thank you, Sammy. So I guess let's see it from a STEM student perspective. Maybe Andrew can share how does the experience he gained from being a member of the algorithm trading at UCLA help him prepare for the current position as a trading analyst at Citigroup?
Oof, that's a rough question. Okay, so the Algo Trading Club at UCLA isn't a proper club, I don't think. I went there like a couple times, wasn't a proper club, didn't have anything, put it on my resume, moved on with my life. So sort of a rough question to ask. In terms of STEM in specific, like I joined the ICPC club for STEM, which is a programming club. It's like a competitive programming club. And once again, like sort of the reason why I did this, like Sammy said, is because at the end of the day, you really want something on your resume. You want something that when companies see your resume, they'll see, oh, he didn't just waste all his time in college, right? So you definitely want to try and get into one or two things, like, and if you can get a leadership position in those things, that's like even better. In terms of how it prepared me for my role, I'm going to speak more to my internship experience rather than my job currently, because I interned as a quant, which is more STEM oriented, I suppose. I mean, personally, that club helped me a lot. One of the things that you have to do once you work, especially if you're going to do something related to coding, is you have to be very comfortable with what you're doing, because when things come at you when you're working, they're going to come at you so quickly that if you don't have the basics down pretty well, you're going to get lost really, really fast. So being able to code quickly, being able to think sort of on my feet and things like that definitely helped me in terms of the internship experience. And of course, it also helps you during your interviews, especially if you're doing a STEM oriented role, because for programming, for example, a lot of these STEM roles, they'll ask you technical questions during the interview, and they're going to expect you to sort of at least, if not know the answer outright, have a sort of idea of where the answer is going to. So even if you don't exactly know the answer, a lot of the times, if you know the basics or if you're sort of comfortable with the material, you can bullshit together a string of words and make it seem like you know what you're talking about, even though you don't really, which is better than nothing, I suppose.
I see. Okay. So the STEM clubs at UCLA is more of a practical way for you to practice like your internship responsibilities.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's a little different, STEM and like business clubs, for example. For STEM, I feel like while it is very useful to have a leadership position in that, I feel like it's extra useful just to be able to be comfortable with the material, I suppose. Yeah.
I see. Okay, thank you. And so Andrew and Ellaine, you're both analysts. Andrew is with Citigroup here in the US, and Ellaine is with JP Morgan in Indonesia. How do you guys think your typical day at work differ from each other? And what's the working culture like in a Wall Street firm?
You want to start, Andrew?
Sure. Okay, so I mean, personally, I haven't like officially started working yet. I'm starting in like a couple days, but I sort of saw what things were like as an intern. I'm not entirely sure what it's like in Indonesia, so I can only really speak to my experiences. In Wall Street, things are fast. Like there's pressure. There's definitely pressure to perform, especially because a lot of your competition are people like from Ivy Leagues. They're gonna be people that are definitely smarter than you and definitely like got this stuff down. So there's definitely sort of pressure to perform. There's also socials, I suppose. That's another thing to touch on is a lot of the times these Wall Street firms will have these like professional socials where they will like rent out a place and it'll be like small dishes and you're supposed to walk around and ask questions to mentors and things like that. It's a lot more organized in that way, especially because there's so much more people usually in a Wall Street firm than like a firm in Indonesia. Like, for example, when I was interning, my sales and trading and quant team itself, like the intern group was around 300 people and IB was another 300 or something stupid like that. So that was really because of that, it has to be organized, it has to be streamlined. You're supposed to know what you're doing and you're supposed to like perform, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, regarding the working culture in Indonesia, so Andrew mentioned earlier that in his division in quant or in trading, he has like a couple hundred people, and then in IB they have a couple hundred people. But in Indonesia, the branch of like JP Morgan, for example, is so much smaller. So the whole JP Morgan team in Indonesia, we have around 150 people, and that's the whole firm. That includes investment banking, sales and trading, and then operations, compliance, HR. Everyone adds up to 150 people. So it is way smaller, and that way it is also way more like intimate, and everyone kind of know everyone in JP Morgan. So last year when I was interning, we had 4 interns in total for the whole firm. And these 4 interns, all 4 of them are in different divisions of the company. So yeah, that is just to show you the scale, the difference in scale in Wall Street versus in SCBD. And then, yeah. And then regarding the working culture, when you see movies like Wolf of Wall Street or The Big Short, you see this massive trading rooms where people are just shouting words and just like typing on their computers, just being very stressed. It seems like a super stressful environment. And in Indonesia, that is true. People are still shouting and people are still typing furiously on their keyboards and stuff, but it is on a much smaller scale. So in my team in sales and trading, we have 10 people in total. We have 5 sales and 5 traders. And it is a very small team, even for Indonesia, but that is currently the right number of people that is needed for the products that we have in the country, and also the sum of and also the deals that we have in the country. So yeah, I think everything has a purpose. Regarding the working culture and the competitiveness, I think it should be way less than Wall Street, of course. People are not super pressured to do well and stuff. I think what helps is also, let's say me, I'm the youngest person in my team, and I don't have anyone else my age that is also in my team. So I think that kind of removes the pressure of, oh, I have to do better than that other person to like secure this position and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I would say yes, definitely less intense than Wall Street in America, but the typical personalities and type of work that you do is still sales and trading, and it still has a lot of similarities as well.
I see. Okay, so yeah, the location is definitely affects the way the culture is in the office, like every day. Yeah, and the daily working culture of a firm. So speaking of working culture, um, I'm gonna ask Parama to share his experience where he did internship in SF, multiple internships in SF, and also in Tokyo. What are some key differences that you can share to all of us?
Okay. So the question is like the difference working culture between SF and Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's quite different. Um, so I'm taking architecture as my major, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've been studying architecture in the US for the past 5 years, 6 years. And I really like Japanese architecture, and that was the reason why I really want to go to Japan to learn about the architecture. So I worked at Shigeruban Architecture. It's like a Pritzker winner architecture company, which is like a Nobel Prize for architecture. So I was really grateful to have the chance for that. And the working culture is really different than the US. So it's firstly, the working hours is really crazy and really intense in Japan. It's like 10 to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Wow.
So I have a coworker who like I have a coworker who worked until 6 or 7 p.m. and then he would go home to have a dinner with his family and then go back at 8 and work until 10 and then go home. That's if you ask me if I want to work there in Japan full time, I don't think I want to. But it was I think it was a good experience for me. And I would say it's more other than the working hours, it's the culture. They are they really honor like it their like boss, you know. It's more like hierarchical, I would say.
Hierarchical.
In the US it's it's like the gap between you and the boss is like not really obvious, right? But in the Asia it's more somewhat obvious. And then other than that, it's more on the technical side, mostly like software. They use different softwares, they use different terms, they use the way they do meetings are different. It's more of kind of like those.
Oh, I see. So when you did internship in Tokyo, was language a barrier for you? The
Um,
different language?
yeah, it was. I mean, I only know like a couple words from Japan, like "toire wa doko desu ka," which means like "where's the toilet," something like that, and that's not really helpful,
Oh
right?
yeah, that's important.
But I would say they put me in the international team, so it was okay. But I do not understand the whole meeting, so I would attend like 1 or 2 hours meeting, and then I do not understand anything, and then after that my supervisor would tell me like 5 minutes. Oh, we were talking about this. I was like, oh wow, you summarized all those 2 hours in 5 minutes. Okay, I don't know. I would say there's barrier for sure. You can be like manager or like associate if you cannot speak Japanese, at least in my company and many other companies also. So if you'd like to work at a certain countries, it is good for you to at least understand or have a certain level of proficiency of the language of the country itself.
I see. So how did you, so you interned in the US and then how did you apply to Tokyo to get that internship?
Okay, so after I worked full time in the US, so I worked after I graduated 2018 and then 2019 my OPT ends, right? And then I just applied to multiple companies. I applied to Europe, Copenhagen, Barcelona, Japan, Singapore, and those all other those companies. And basically, I was not expecting a return from the Japan one because they were my dream company. I
Oh,
presented
wow.
I presented their works like in 2016 in front of my colleagues when I was interning, and the work to be able to work there was just like oh, it was a dream. And then suddenly they just replied to me, hey Parama, we're interested in your portfolio and application. So when can you start? Something like that, basically.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wow, that's a great experience and a rare one actually. So since a lot of students majoring in business tend to go for consulting, Samantha here as an international student is able to navigate her way to the consulting field. Can you please share the process and what to look for when you're planning to go for consulting?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the timeline is pretty set for a lot of industries like consulting, and I think also for banking. And I think, yeah, mostly for consulting and banking, the timeline is pretty set. And the reason why I also have heavily really advocated like getting plugged in into some sort of community on campus that is trying to go for the industry that you're going for is because you will also get updates about this timeline because you cannot miss it. The basically what consulting is very difficult to get into consulting if you've graduated already. You're gonna have to be hired as an experienced hire. So the best way to get into consulting is through campus recruiting as a student. And usually there's two ways to enter. The first is if you apply for a junior year internship. So that means after your junior year, your last ever summer as a student, you're going to intern at one of these companies and they're going to have like these internship programs specifically designed for juniors. And then the reason that they have these internship programs is to convert the good ones to become full-time, or most of them at least. If you don't screw up, you're basically almost guaranteed a full-time offer. It's called return offers, and basically that's like the best case scenario because in your senior year when everyone is trying to get a job, trying to stay in the US or just like, trying to get a job after graduation, you get to chill because you already have an offer waiting for you. That's the best case scenario. And then the other scenario, which is also not bad, and a lot of people do this too, because some people might not know they want to pursue consulting until later, maybe. And there's a lot of people, and they make just as good as consultants, but then they have to recruit in senior year. And these recruiting events happen in the fall. So for full-time recruiting, so this is not for the internship, you're going to have to do that in senior year, and it's going to be early in the fall. Sometimes the application is going to be before fall quarter even starts. So I applied to Bain full-time, and I just wanted to see what would happen. I didn't get it, but the deadline was during the summer. So like you need to like really know like when the deadlines are, keep track of like all these different firms and their deadlines, and you don't want to miss them. And then for junior year, for the internship, that's also going to happen in the fall, but it's a little later. Like it's going to be like maybe second week, third week. So like maybe the first few weeks of your fall, it's going to be busy with recruiting with different companies and things like that. So that's generally the timeline. Like, was that clear? I know there's like different moving parts, but basically you can either recruit for the internship or you recruit for full-time. And then before that, as freshman and sophomore, like you can't really get into like the big consulting firms. Like they don't accept freshmen and sophomores, but you don't have to also, it's not necessary for you to get consulting experience before going into consulting. Like I think a lot of people are scared. They're like, how do I get consulting experience before I apply to these consulting firms? And I don't think they necessarily want people also who had consulting experience prior. Like I think it doesn't hurt you, but they don't require it because your perspective in whatever industry that you're interning for also brings something to the table. So for example, in sophomore year, I interned at a venture capital firm because I was really interested in startups and things like that. And I did that in Jakarta. So I had an insight about how things, what the market was like, especially in the VC industry in Southeast Asia. And a lot of people did like things that they were interested in too, like they were exploring tech and they were doing this and that. and then they came back to consulting, or they applied to consulting later, and then in the job they were able to kind of draw from their diverse experiences. So freshman and sophomore year, try to get internships, try to get like work experiences in fields that you're interested in, and that's going to all come into play later when you're recruiting for consulting. And another thing that's unique about consulting is that they're going to have the case interviews. Ellaine, I think, mentioned it in the beginning of this call. So these case interviews are basically notorious because they're hard, and people who plan to recruit for consulting would prepare for this quite early, at least junior or at least sophomore year, like spring quarter, they're already going to start preparing for it and like practicing. If you're applying to consulting clubs on campus, you're going to be asked to case as well. So a lot of freshmen like practiced for the interviews for the clubs. And basically what cases are, they're basically questions, like problems that you would need to solve in about 20 to 30-minute time. And the interviewer is going to sit in front of you, and you're going to have a piece of paper, and you're going to walk through the problem and try to solve it. So the problem could be like, why are your client is this company and their profits are down, like what's happened? And you want to explore that with the interviewer. So that requires a lot of practice. And I know for me, especially, I get really nervous and I have to do some math and I'm not very great with math, especially when I'm nervous. So I tend to like mess up the numbers. So that's why you want to practice and be very comfortable with it. So if you are looking into consulting, then you would want to start preparing for that and practicing with your friends. You can't practice this alone either, which is why preparing for consulting is like a social thing almost. Like you want to have that group with you because, for example, like my friends in 180 Degrees Consulting was very helpful to me in that process because I would just message them and be like, hey, can we, practice casing and things like that. So yeah, that's like all the different components that fall into place when you're like preparing for consulting. And that's kind of, if you know the timeline and if you know like what you need to be doing when, it's actually quite straightforward compared to other jobs because it's very structured. So if you like structure, that's actually less stressful than like just trying to like randomly apply for jobs and different functions and different things. Even though it does sound kind of intimidating at first.
I see. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful because so it's really useful to know the timeline very early on and make sure to prepare it, to start preparing as soon as you figure out that you're going into consulting, you're interested in consulting. The last topic before we continue our questions to Q&A, I would like to talk about the uncertain situation that we're currently in right now due to COVID-19. When the pandemic hit the world, which was around March, which was 5 months ago, how did it impact your workplace? For example, recruitment process or even like position availability? Yeah. I'm opening up the floor to anyone.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can start this one. Because I was working in New York, which is sort of like the epicenter for the US, especially like in March. Basically, what they did was they sent all of the employees home, and then they figured out like how to work from home from there. In terms of hiring, which is I feel more important to the audience. Because finance and because I'm pretty sure consulting as well, because we hire so early in the year, most of the people that had offers just either had like either delayed offers or like all the people that offered would just get full-time or things like that. Most of the big banks did something similar to this. So in a way, it worked out for a lot of the people.
Well, thankfully.
That early on, yeah. But in terms of working itself, you're basically sent like a computer. I mean, for me, because they told me that I had to start working from home, they sent me like a computer and a monitor and everything, and like you use like a virtual desktop so that you can work virtually into the company itself.
I see. So they're very prepared they had time to prepare for all of this. And Ellaine, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think for JP Morgan, for my firm, it's also pretty similar to Andrews, to Citi. So we are very lucky that everyone that had offers, no matter if they're interns, if they're full-time, all of them still have their offers. And they just have to do some restructuring with the program. For example, for interns, usually interns in JP Morgan, they would have a 10-week internship in the office, and then there would be a lot of socializing, a lot of events as well. But for this year, they had to concise the internship program all the way into 5 weeks, and everything has to be online. So that is kind of the big change, but they still have their offers and they're still getting paid. And I think that is one of the biggest relief for people who has offers from these big firms. Regarding full-time workers like myself right now, so in Indonesia, almost everyone is working from home except the sales and trading team, because it's really hard for us to like trade from like a piece, just like a small laptop, because we usually have a lot of screens and we have a lot of softwares open in all these 6 screens. So it's really hard for us to work from home. So what is happening right now is everyone except the sales and trading team is working from home. And for me, I'm going to be working from home until late August, because I'm going to finish my training then, and then I'm going to start going to the office. So yeah, they're doing what they can to keep everyone safe, but it's not ideal.
I see. Okay, that's yeah, like you said, it's a very big relief for all of the incoming like full-time interns. They still have their positions, even with the situation right now. And Sammy, you want to add something?
Yeah, so for me, I don't really know what happened to the summer interns. I've been kind of unplugged from the whole, like I didn't get any updates on that. My own offer actually got delayed because of COVID. So Deloitte canceled their July start date. So everyone who was supposed to start working full time in July, no one's starting in July anymore. And then they have a very small class starting in September or October. So they have them spread out, and most of them, like most of us, are starting in January 2021. So I'm actually not going to start with Deloitte until next year. So I'm going to be interning with an e-commerce brand until then, for the sake of my OPT, because as you guys might know, you need to be, so as soon as your OPT starts, or you like if you put I put August 11th as my start date. So since August 11th, I can't be unemployed for more than 90 days. So I have to like find other alternatives to stay in the US. But yeah, a lot of the full-time new grads are getting delayed offers until January. I don't know what they're gonna do in terms of hiring for next year. As I mentioned before, they will start hiring in the fall. So they actually have to figure this out now, even though the internship is going to happen in the summer, right? So I personally don't really know, unfortunately. But I also want to note that since this year, a lot of the big 4 accounting firms and the consulting firms don't really accept international students anymore to work at the US offices. So for example, Deloitte is no longer accepting international students. So I was actually one of the last international students to get accepted, along with some other international interns last summer. So it's not like you can't get into consulting anymore, and it may very well change in the next 4 years, because they just changed this literally in a year, right? But keep that in mind and try to like ask directly to the recruiters if they're actually accepting international students, or if they have updated that policy. But as of this year, they weren't accepting any. And I know that other companies like EY weren't doing it either. I think PwC aren't doing it either. So a lot of these companies, because it's very difficult for us to get work visas now, they don't really want to take the chances. And this was before pandemic. So I don't know if the pandemic, I have a feeling the pandemic just made it even worse. But it is still very, like, you can still go through campus recruiting and recruit for Indonesian offices. which is what like some of us did, like Laura, who got BCG at Jakarta. She went like she interviewed with Ellaine, I think, in Chicago, and then Boston. Did she? But yeah, she interviewed in the US, but then her offer was in Jakarta, and that's fine. The people who aren't accepting international students are just the US offices. So I just wanted to throw that out there so people are aware. And if you are still interested in trying to like work in consulting in the US, just like reach out to the companies and like really ask like if they're actually opening up slots for internationals. Other than that, maybe look at other companies or other industries for the time being, especially for the junior transfers or even like juniors who are about to start the process, because a lot of things can change in like 4 years. So I don't know for like the freshmen now.
I see. Okay, thank you so much for the information. So make sure to always reach out to the recruiters. Don't be afraid. Just ask their what are their like process like for international students, and yeah, maybe I mean going to consulting is not impossible. Just make sure to know all of the key like the highlights that for international students. So staying informed is definitely key during this uncertain time. We've learned so much from our speakers today. Always be willing to grow and seize every opportunity that comes your way, and just go ahead, explore. That concludes the panel today. Thank you so much once again, Parama, Andrew, Ellaine, and Samantha for sharing the story behind your success. We'll open this time for Q&A, and I'll let my friends Michelle and Winston to take over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chanel, for being our host of the day. That was a very insightful discussions earlier. Now, I know a lot of you guys still have a lot of burning questions that you wanted to ask our wonderful speakers here. So I'm going to introduce myself for a little bit. My name is Michelle, and I'm with my friend here, Winston. Winston, can you say hi for me?
Hi everyone, I'm Winston.
And we're going to lead the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it down in the chat box below, and we'll deliver it to our speaker. We have some questions that I can see in the chat from Kevin, William, and also Devin. If you don't mind, Winston, can you take a shot for our first question?
Okay, so I'm going to read question for Kevin. From Kevin to Parama. How is the statement of purpose SOP different for graduate application from undergrad in terms of content and style, etc., etc.?
I'd say it's similar but different. It's like it really depends on the questions. So I would say for undergraduate, it's more like general, but in graduate degree, they ask you specific questions that you have to answer. So it really depends on which school you apply. Because like, let's say Harvard, they asked me 3 questions, Yale asked me 2 questions, MIT only asked me 1 essay. And let's say Harvard asked me like philosophical questions. They just want to know the way how I think about some things. So it really depends on the schools. And maybe in terms of style, I'd say grad school, they like to have like, if specifically for Ivy League, they like to see like some English Ivy League words, you know, I don't know. That's just like a tips for me. Michelle Obama, if you read Michelle's Obama book, The Becoming, at one part she mentions, I can speak 3 languages. First one, like the normal English. The second one is the Ivy League English. The third one is the law school English. So those languages would set you apart also from other candidates.
Okay, thank you, Parama. Maybe I'll go.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, first, congratulations, Parama. It's such a big accomplishment. He got accepted to so many programs. And so back to the questions from William and Parama basically, was right about writing for graduate school, that you have to be, definitely outstanding and more specific. And say coming to the other end, because I reviewed applications, I reviewed fellowships too. Okay, let me open my camera here. So when you apply to graduate schools, you definitely need to know the program very well, because you need to mention it a bit in your application, in your statement, that that program is really a good fit for you. It's not only what you can bring to the program and how you can survive, very rigorous graduate school training, but also that you know what they are doing. You know what the faculty are doing. And if you can refer to their publication, to their research and everything, that make you more stand out. Like you do your homework before you're applying for the program. And also, I think many of you will master degree, probably your terminal degrees, like MBA and so forth, because many of you come from business econ background or actuary, and like you may not think about going to the PhD PhD program, for instance. But still, if you're planning to go to PhD programs, then it's a little different too. Definitely research really matters and things like that. For master terminal degrees, your job experience really matters. And some people mentioned earlier, leadership, right? Sammy and Ellaine, like everybody's kind of involved in some leadership, some organizations. So it really makes you stand out. And another thing, there was a question about GRE, but that's for Parama. But maybe for Parama, it's nothing. Maybe it's very easy for him, but GRE is really, really tough. But again, don't be discouraged if you still have to get the highest GRE score as possible. But statement of purpose really matters for graduate school. It has to be really, really strong. So do your homework, make a reference to research that the faculty there are doing and what you can bring to the program besides how you can survive in the rigorous training. That's from me. If I, Parama just, definitely does a lot of work here, and then he got accepted at a very, very good programs in, very prestigious colleges. So that's wonderful. Very good.
Thank you so much, Ibu Juliana, for the infos. I think it's great coming from a faculty member so that we can have an insight of, how to understand those people who are looking at our applications better. I think to conclude that the most important is to be resourceful, to research, to understand maybe the faculty members or the people or the school we're applying to. So Michelle will continue with the next question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the insightful advices, Parama and Bu Juliana. Not to mention, also Becoming by Michelle Obama is one of my favorite books. But moving on to the next question. So Ibu Juliana mentioned earlier about advices on taking SAT and having to emphasize who we are and how can we contribute to the program. Now for Parama, do you have any advices regarding tips or recommendations for the exams itself or scheduling and preparation?
I would say GRE, it's not easy for me with Juliana. It was hard for me. I'd say I did not take SAT, but maybe for some of you guys who took SAT before, it might be easier for you guys. And I would say it's like, if I can give you some tips, just take the magush.com GRE prep if you guys want to learn about the GRE, because I previously took the one in Indonesia and it cost me like 10 times of the price of Magush. So just took the online prep from a gush because that really helps. The questions is really similar, and then it's like it's computer based and the exam is computer based, so you would understand how would the exam be in the actual exam. So that's I guess that's my tips for the theory, and start as early as you can. Once you work, you're gonna get lazy and you're gonna forget all those maths and like the English part.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Parama. I'm going to pass along the next questions for our friends Winston, if you can say it out.
Maybe I'll add for Parama a little bit. Can you please, if you don't mind, send the link on the chat so that
Sure. Yes, I'll send it to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll continue for the question from Devin for Samantha. Is there a way to skip the resume screener and get straight into the interviews in consulting, or a version of this?
No, I don't think so. I think, I mean, I can't speak for all firms. If you have like, I don't know, if you like know the CEO or your dad works there, or like a really close relative that could like slide you in, maybe, but that's very unlikely. And people, I feel like people who get in that way, the other interns or the other people who like had to get in the hard way, if like they find out that you did that, might be a little salty. I mean, I don't know. I can say how it's easier though to get to get your resume flagged and probably get looked at, and you're probably gonna get an interview. It's not like foolproof, it's not guaranteed, but if you're a part of very strong organizations in UCLA, they have like some of them have very close relationships with firms that recruit, so that if they see that you are a part of these programs and a part of these organizations, they're going to be like, oh, like this person's getting an interview. One of them is Sharp Fellows. So for business students, the Sharp Fellows is kind of just like, they say it's like the fellowship of like the brightest business students at UCLA. And there's like different tracks in the Sharp Fellowship. There's like consulting, there's finance, financial services, there's banking, there's technology. And I think it doesn't really benefit you, like being in the fellowship, you just get a line in your resume, but I think it's like, especially LA-based companies like Bain LA or Deloitte LA, like knows like people in the Sharp Fellows have been vetted already. Like to get into the Sharp Fellows, you are going to be interviewed by alumni who work at these consulting. So I got interviewed by like an MBA alumni who works at Bain LA. So they know that these people with the Sharp Fellow banner has been vetted. As well as the undergraduate business society, they have a consulting spring training in the spring, and then they have the consulting workshop in the fall. If you get into these programs, companies who have good relationships with the undergraduate business society, the UBS for short, they will know that these students are also pre-vetted by UBS, that they have like good leadership qualities already, they are connected on campus, so that when
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I just don't want you to go any further because I actually graduated, so most of these opportunities are like kind of useless anyway. So I don't know. Do you have any solution for that? I guess.
Well, I don't. So if you're looking into going into consulting after graduating, I think the best case is to either get in through like the experience hire route, and I am not really clear on how that works, but I know that they sometimes open like slots for people with like experience in like an industry, and then you go in and you become a consultant in that specific industry, if that makes sense. And I know a lot of people who like go back to business school and then come back into consulting.
So anything 1 year after graduation would be considered a experience hire. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. But I do think when they talk about experience hire, they are looking for people who can really give value in that specific industry. Right. So then they might want more than 1 year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I hope what I said before for other people here who are maybe like juniors, sophomores, or freshmen, that's going to be helpful as well.
Okay. Thank you, Samantha. That's a really great answer. And like again, guys, like Devin, if you guys want to continue your question, you can just turn on your mic and say hi, and just don't be shy. You know, you can turn on the mic, turn on your camera, say hi. Or if you want to ask questions, um, just write on the chat. I want to ask questions, so we would give it to you when it's your turn, and you can turn on your camera and ask questions directly to our panelists. So we'll continue with the questions from Elena. Michelle.
Sure, thank you, Winston. That was a very insightful resources that you mentioned earlier, Samantha. Also, I would recommend to utilize our career center because UCLA has a very amazing career center that you can use optimally especially before graduating. Okay, so from Alina, she doesn't really direct these questions to anyone. So I guess if any of you are interested to answer, feel free to do so. Her question is, can you explain the process in obtaining a work visa right after you graduate, or if you need to take extra steps to obtain an internship in the US with the F1 visa? For example, if you need social security number or etc. Thank you.
Yeah, I can sort of speak on the F1 visa part. So when you get a job here, for example, they'll send you like sort of like an acceptance letter, and then you're going to use this acceptance letter to like, and you're going to bring it, and you're going to have to fill out like a couple different forms. I don't remember exactly what they are now. It's going to be, so first you're going to apply for an OPT and all the forms that's required with that. Once you send that in, if you don't have an SSN, they'll send you an SSN, and they'll also send you like a card, an EAD card, which allows you to work for 1 year. For big companies, they'll use that 1 year or that 1 + 2 years, whatever works, in order to apply for like apply for like a visa, a work visa, once you graduate, I suppose. So once this OPT ends, you can instantly have a visa so that you don't have to stop working. This is usually, you don't have to do anything special per se in a full-time job, as long as you tell them like you're an international student. If they want you to sort of be there, usually for big companies, they'll have a legal team, or they'll get in touch with a legal team that will speak to you personally about like, I need this, and this, so that we can make your case. And then after that, it's all really just rolling the dice and hoping that you get the lottery.
Thank you so much. Any other speaker wanted to add to that? Maybe Ellaine or Samantha?
I think that's covered it pretty well. Just to add on the OPT part of it, there's like, you don't have to already get a job when you apply for an OPT, because they give you 90 days to look for a job. Essentially, that's the 90 days unemployment. So basically what happens is when you apply for an OPT, you get to decide when the OPT will start. And that is anywhere between like right after you graduate to 60 days after you graduate. So for example, I graduated in June 11th or something like that. So I get to start, like my latest date to put as my start date is August 11th. And then you have 90 days after that to be unemployed. So technically you have 60 plus 90 days to look for a job until you, and then, you know, after that, if you don't get a job by then you can't stay anymore. But I just wanted to mention it, so it's like not super pressured, like, oh, like I don't have a job by the time I graduate, I can't stay. You definitely still have that time to look for jobs, and I know a lot of people who do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the clarification. I know like it's very stressful for most of us, especially international students, having to deal with the process of OPT. So definitely I will also recommend to consult with Dashu. They will definitely guide you guys through it. Okay, so for next question, Winston, do you mind taking on from there?
Okay, so I'll continue with the question from Dylan. So I think Dylan's question is has a strong relationship with what we do yesterday. So like mentors and professionals. What Richard said yesterday was to build connections through applications like LinkedIn. For our panelists today, do you guys also use LinkedIn, or how do you create how do you create and maintain relationships with mentors in your respective fields? To any speakers, to any panelists who wants to answer.
Maybe I can start. Well, to me, I'd say having a mentor, it's not like having a teacher, you know, it's more like having a friend. So I would treat my mentor as like my friend, like my family, someone who I would just bring them to go for lunch together. You know, it's not something like, oh, you're my mentor, you're gonna be my teacher forever, or something like that. So you should have like a good relationship with your mentor, as in a like a normal positive friendship way. And a LinkedIn is a good way to find a mentor. I found some of my mentors from LinkedIn. Let's say I was looking for someone who studied at MIT. I just Googled MIT architecture Jakarta. And then I would see some people who were from Indonesia, and then I just messaged them. The question is that, will they answer you? It's not, they would not always answer you. But let's say if you ask 10 people, if you message 10 people, it's likely possible that there's at least one person who would reply to you, right? If there's no reply, then there might be something wrong with your message request. So I would say treat your mentor as your friend. That's the most important thing.
Okay. Thanks, Parama. So, with that being said, we'll extend our time until 10:15 for the Q&A, because we have a lot of questions. And so Michelle will continue with the next question.
Okay, so since our event is a very time crunch, I'm just going to move on to our next question. It's from Callista. I'm guessing this is for Parama as well. So I know that for us international students, everything is very confusing here, and we're like, it's as if like we are having to go through a lot of obstacles just to apply for things like grant and you know, especially for master's or PhD. Do you think that as an international student really affect us of getting accepted into this program?
What does it mean by the grant base? Does it mean like they would only rely on grant to enter the PhD, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say they always have like a quota for international students. So it's without, I would say if you see the statistic of the international students distribution, they always have like a almost consistent number of international students in each school. So I would say if you can maximize your opportunity on that quota, then you can just apply for it. And I mean, if you ask me, like, is there a limit for international student? Well, I think so, because like, it's not gonna be like a full international student school, right? There's gonna be quota for the locals as well. So I would say, just try to apply, and then you'll know whether you can get accepted in there or not.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So just try and try again. Just do as much application as you can. You know, look for the opportunity. Seize the opportunities. I mean, so we'll continue with Valerie. Our fellow board members. She wants to ask the question herself. So please, Valerie.
Hi. So I have a question, probably to Andrew. So we all know that you here double majored in computer science and math economics, and that's like crazy, right? Like even being a CS major is like already very busy. But on top of that, you got into Citibank, you got a lot of internships, and you are also a part of a lot of clubs. So do you have any tips for like time management? And when it comes to like priorities, do you have any insights for us, especially for us that are just starting our days at UCLA? Like, what do we have to prioritize? So on. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So in terms of double majoring, I started UCLA as a freshman, not as a transfer. So because of that, I had a lot more time to take a lot of units and still graduate on time. I don't know if I would recommend taking an extra year in order to double major if you had to do it. I don't know if I would do the same. Like if I came as a transfer, I don't know if I would do the same, but I feel like if I didn't get a good internship during that junior year, I would probably think about it just so I have another opportunity to apply for internships, because I feel like that's one of the easiest ways of getting a decent, like a really, if you're applying to something that's really competitive, I think one of the best ways of doing that is through an internship and then getting a return offer, because that's what a lot of the big firms are going to be looking for. So that's in terms of my double major. In terms of my extracurriculars, because I sort of double majored, a lot of the times I didn't have as much time for extracurriculars as I would like. But I mean, that's really an important part of your resume as well. You definitely have to have something on there, something that you can show and something to talk about. Because of that, you really shouldn't focus too hard on the double major itself, in my opinion. You should try to figure out majors that are supplementary, but that will not take so much units that you will crumble under that weight. So you should try and sort of be strategic about it. Try to pick things that you know that you'll have enough time to do and do well. And because of that, and you sort of just try and keep it together for as long as you can, until you can apply to a job and then they give you it and then you can sort of relax at that point.
Thank you so much.
So there it is, time management tip from Andrew. We'll continue with the question from Henry to Ellaine. So what is the big differences in job application process between the States versus Indo in terms of resume structure, interview questions, etc.? So we know you're working at the international company, JP Morgan, but you're working at Jakarta. So can you explain a little bit about what's the difference between working
Sure.
in the States and in Indo? And why you pick Indo, maybe?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I realized I didn't get the chance to explain more about my recruitment process. So the recruitment process is like Samantha's, is very structured. So you apply to the website and then you submit your resume and a cover letter. And after that, it's also pretty basic. So after you submit your cover letter, then they will contact you if they want you for a video interview. And that video interview is not with a person. The video interview is with an AI software called HireVue. And that is like the first screening where you will sort of answer questions that a computer will throw at you. So for example, the questions would be, what is your most valuable experience in your college career? And then you have 60 seconds to think about it, and then another 60 seconds to answer. So that was kind of the first process, the first screening process of JP Morgan, and I believe many other banks as well, many other investment banks as well. And after you go through that HireVue screening, then they will call you back if they want you for a second round of interview. The second round of interview usually would be by phone. And then the final round of interview would be a super day, the one that I explained earlier, the one in Hong Kong. So for the only difference, I guess, for recruiting in Indonesia and non-Indonesia is based from my experience. For the job in Hong Kong, the super day was directly in their office all the way in Hong Kong. But for JP Morgan in Indonesia, all the super day was held online. So everything was via Zoom, like a Zoom platform. Yeah. So for that super day, what we did was we had a group interview with 5 other candidates that made it through the final round. And yeah, after the group interview, then we got called back for a final round of interview with around 5 directors or 3 directors, I think. So the process itself is pretty similar. It's just that for Indonesia, everything is held online if you are not in Indonesia. But if you are in Indonesia, then they will make you come to the office.
Hey, Lena, I think I just want to clarify my questions, right? So I've been working in the US for like almost 4 years now, and then I think I'm planning to go back to Indo in probably the next 2 years. So I just want to know that, is there a big difference? For example, let's pick example of resume, right? Is there like, do you need to change your resume structure for like, hey, like applying in Indo versus like applying in the States? Because I know that right here we have like standards, right? Like, hey, your resume needs to be 1 page. And like in Indo, I actually have no idea, but like, hey, can it be like 1 page or 2 page, or it's like a mix of that? Like maybe you can kind of clarify that point.
Yeah, of course. So I think for resume, it's no difference. If they say on their portal that you need to submit a resume, then you will need a 1-page resume. But maybe what you can indicate more about like your experience in the US, or like if you want to explain that, oh, I've been working in the US for 4 years and then I want to apply to Indo, maybe you can tell that more in your cover letter. But regarding resume and CV, I believe it is the same standard. It's just that if they want a resume, then you submit a 1-page resume. Then if they want a CV on their platform, then you submit your CV.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ellaine. That was very thorough. So I'm going to end today's Q&A session by a question for all of you guys, for all the panel speakers. What tips would you give to your younger self? It's like, about professional development and navigating your career path upon graduation. For everyone. I mean, Ellaine or Andrew can start.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I missed it.
Yeah, what would you recommend your younger self in regards of professional development and like navigating your way for career path upon graduation and stuff like that? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess I can start then. So what I would tell to my younger self. I personally believe that one of the most important things in order to like get a job in the US is networking. It's like being able to like join clubs, and you have to talk to people, and you have to be able to sort of like get your foot in the door. That's, I think, the easiest, and that's probably the best way of doing it. However, I'm awfully bad at it. And my younger self was even worse at it. So I can't really say that completely. I think if you can't do that, like I wasn't able to, the most important thing to do, and I would say this to my younger self as well, is like you really have to make sure that you stand out somewhere, somehow. If you're applying to big firms and that are very competitive, unfortunately, UCLA isn't really a target school for a lot of these firms. I can like more on the finance point of view, it's not really a target school. And so they'll mostly hire from Columbia and Carnegie Mellon and things like this. Because of that, you want to structure what you do in the next 4 years in order to stand out at least at one thing. Because if you're sort of average, or if you do everything sort of in general, there's a good chance you're not going to be better than one of these, like someone from Columbia, for example, who will more likely than not maybe be able to do everything better than you can. If you focus sort of more on one thing, it's a gamble for sure. And like, it's a lot riskier. But if a recruiter or if someone looks at this and like values that part of you, then there's a higher chance that you'll get it rather than a very low chance, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very, very useful. Definitely, because like also myself, I'm a transfer student. Like also I came from a community college. It's like very baffling, the idea of networking and reaching out. But you gotta, push beyond your comfort zone eventually. If anyone wanted to add to that.
I can add to that. So if I think if I can give my younger self some advice, it's to not be afraid to try different things. So what I have right now in my resume and in my work experience, I am very focused on the typical business industries like consulting and finance. So I think spring quarter last year, I was searching for internships in the entrepreneurship scene for my entrepreneurship minor, and I find that I was having a hard time getting into this startups and like marketing jobs because I didn't have any experience at all in those fields. Because my experience was very focused in consulting and finance, then it was sort of hard for me to get something that is more fun, like marketing or advertising, although I really wanted some experience in that area as well, and I think I would be good at it as well. So yeah, my advice for my younger self would be, from freshman year, do not just focus on one thing and keep your options open. Go to as many clubs as possible, and then explore your interests, and don't be too focused on what society kind of tells you to do, or in my case, what my parents told me to do, because my dad is a very finance person. So kind of all my college year, I only know about finance and business, and I wish I had explored more. So yeah, it's just a good experience. Even though you might not use it in later on in your life, you can still look back at it and see it as a fun and useful experience. So yeah, that's all for me.
I can add to that maybe. It's really interesting to hear the statement from Andrew and Ellaine, because like Andrew said, you have to find something special from you. And then Ellaine said, you have to explore many things. And I think that really complements each other. I really agree with both statements. So fun fact, I did not major in architecture during my first semester. I majored in chemical engineering, but I decided to choose different major. On my first semester, I took chemistry and architecture at the same time, just to explore which major I'm really passionate about. And I decided to choose architecture. I don't think I would get accepted to those like Harvard School if I attended for chemical engineering. So it's really important for each and every one of us to explore a bunch of things, so that way you know which part is your strength and your forte, and that way you can improve and find your specialty in that case. And the last one is that to enjoy your study in college and just have fun, because like 4 years would go really fast, and my biggest advice is just to enjoy your time while you are in college, because you're gonna miss it when you work.
Yeah, and adding.
Maybe Sammy can rev it up for.
Yeah, I think everyone basically already said what I wanted to say, but another, just like one tiny thing that I would have told my younger self was not to be intimidated like all the time. I think coming to UCLA, it's such a big school, and you have a lot of people who you have a lot of people that are really confident, especially when you go to like, I don't know, like events and like network, like professional events and things like that, and you like compare yourself with everybody else, especially when you're competing with like US students, like American students, and they sound very confident, they sound like they know what they're talking about. It's very easy to feel down and like, oh, I can't compete with anybody or whatever, like I don't want to network, it's very difficult. But yeah, I think now after like going through the 4 years and going through the whole like recruiting process and all of these navigation, I would just tell myself like, stop being so intimidated. Like people who sound very confident like might also just be in the same position as you, and just like try your best and explore. Like when I was a freshman, I didn't want to, like I felt so scared every time I want to apply to something, and I would feel so discouraged if I don't get like an invite or like an interview offer or whatever, even if it's just a club. And I would have my friend would always just say like, there's no harm in trying, just like send it out, and then who cares, like if you don't get anything out of it. And it took a while to get that, like to get to that mindset. So yeah, it's like more of a fluffy advice, but I think it's important, especially for incoming transfers and freshmen.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much, guys. I think it's a very inspiring message for all of the students, including me myself. I think to wrap it up, it's about much more about getting out of your comfort zone, being able to being able to try new things, to explore new things, and lastly, being not intimidated, be brave, and trying to be involved in communities. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, guys, for coming, for attending this event. Thank you also to our panelists who make this event great. We'll have a little bit of announcement at the end of our event.